There was a time when luxury didn't need to shout. It didn't rely on massive screens, endless chrome, or exaggerated designs to prove its value. In the 1960s, American luxury was something you felt the moment a car rolled past you, often without making a sound. These cars weren't built to impress everyone. They were built for people who had already arrived. Some expressed luxury through silence, others through presence, some through price, others through design, posture, or sheer confidence. And here's the real question. What did luxury really mean before it became excess? In this video, we're not just listing the most expensive or the most famous cars of the 1960s. We're exploring the machines that defined American luxury before it changed forever. Cars that didn't need to explain themselves. Cars that represented power, elegance, restraint, and status in very different ways. If you've ever been fascinated by an era when luxury was a statement, not a spectacle, this journey is for you. Let's begin. 1961 to 1963, Lincoln Continental. If there is one car that perfectly defines silent American luxury, it's this one. The early 60s Lincoln Continental didn't try to look rich. It looked powerful. Its design was almost shocking for the time. Flat sides, clean surfaces, no excessive chrome, no dramatic fins. While other luxury cars were still flirting with exaggeration, Lincoln went in the opposite direction and created something calm, confident, and almost intimidating in its restraint. And then, there were the doors. The rear hinge suicide doors weren't a gimmick. They became a symbol of authority. When a Continental stopped and all four doors opened wide, it didn't feel theatrical. It felt institutional. This was the kind of car associated with presidents, diplomats, and people who didn't need to announce themselves. Inside, the experience reinforced that message. Broad seats, enormous space, and an atmosphere of isolation from the outside world. Everything felt deliberate, not sporty, not flashy, just correct. This was luxury as control. Under the hood, the Continental carried a massive 430 cubic inch V8, producing around 300 horsepower. But performance was never the point. The power existed to make movement effortless. Acceleration was smooth, quiet, and confident. The car didn't rush. It simply went wherever it wanted, whenever it wanted. And that philosophy is exactly why it aged so well. Today, a well-preserved Lincoln Continental from this era typically sits between $40,000 and $80,000, with exceptional examples going beyond that. Not outrageous money for what it represents, but absolutely consistent with its original role: quiet, serious, and authoritative luxury. This design is considered one of the most influential American luxury cars ever made, not because it was extreme, but because it proved that true luxury could be understated. 1963 to 1965, Buick Riviera. If the Lincoln represented power through restraint, the Riviera represented something very different: luxury with personality. When debuted in the early 1960s, it didn't look like a traditional American luxury car. In fact, many people at the time said it looked almost European. Long hood, short rear deck, clean surfaces, and a profile that felt athletic rather than ceremonial. It was elegant but not formal, confident but not intimidating. This was Buick aiming at a new kind of buyer, someone who wanted luxury but didn't want to look like a banker or a politician. The Riviera felt modern, stylish, and intentional. It didn't borrow design cues from Cadillac. It created its own identity. Inside, the car reinforced that idea. The interior was refined, but more driver-focused than most luxury cars of the era. Everything felt lower, tighter, more personal. This wasn't a rolling office. It was a luxury coupe meant to be enjoyed behind the wheel. Under the hood, the Riviera offered serious hardware. Most were equipped with Buick's 401 or 425 cubic inch nailhead V-Fi 8, producing up to 360 horsepower in its most powerful configuration. That made the Riviera genuinely fast for its time, especially considering how composed and civilized it felt at speed. And that contrast is what defines it. The Riviera didn't look aggressive, it didn't sound dramatic, but it could move with authority when asked. Today, the Riviera is widely considered one of the best-looking American cars of the 1960s. Well-kept examples typically trade between $45,000 and $85,000, with exceptional cars pushing even higher. Not cheap, but still reasonable for a design that many consider timeless. 1963 to 1964, Cadillac Series 62, Coupe de Ville. Before Cadillac became synonymous with excess, there was this moment of near perfection. The early 60s, a Series 62, is what happens when luxury is still guided by proportion, not spectacle. Long, clean lines. A roofline that feels low and elegant. Chrome used with confidence, not desperation. This Cadillac didn't try to dominate the street visually. It simply belonged at the top of it. Everything about the design feels balanced. The fins are still there, but restrained. The body is large, but never clumsy. It's cinematic in the best way possible, like a car that naturally fits into a classic film scene without stealing attention from the story. Inside, the experience is exactly what you'd expect from Cadillac at its most refined. Broad seats, excellent materials, and an atmosphere designed around comfort and isolation. This wasn't about sportiness or feedback. It was about arriving, about making the journey feel effortless and controlled. Under the hood, the Series 62 carried Cadillac's smooth 390 cubic inch V8, producing around 325 horsepower. More than enough to move the car with authority. Acceleration was strong, but never dramatic. The power was there to remove effort from driving, not to turn it into an event. And that's what makes this Cadillac special. It didn't need to shock. It didn't need to prove anything. It simply set a standard. Today, well-preserved examples typically sit between $50,000 and $90,000, depending on condition and originality, a fair reflection of a car that represents one of Cadillac's most elegant chapters. And now, I want to hear from you. Do you prefer this kind of restrained, timeless Cadillac, or the more exaggerated designs that would come later in the decade? Let me know in the comments, because that choice says a lot about how each of us defines true luxury. 1963 to 1964, Pontiac Bonneville. This is the car that proves luxury didn't have to feel distant. The Bonneville occupied a very specific space in the early 1960s. It was upscale, confident, and visually impressive. But it didn't carry the emotional distance of a Cadillac. It felt aspirational in a more human way. Luxurious, yes, but still approachable. Design-wise, the Bonneville is all about flow. Long proportions, elegant curves, and just enough chrome to highlight the body without overpowering it. It looks fast even when standing still, not because it tries to, but because the lines naturally suggest movement. There's a sense of energy here that many luxury cars of the time simply didn't have. This was Pontiac at a turning point, still refined, still elegant, but already hinting at a younger, more performance-oriented identity. The Bonneville didn't abandon luxury. It blended it with personality. Inside, the car feels welcoming, rather than imposing, spacious, comfortable, and well-finished, but without the formality of higher-end luxury brands. It was a place where you could enjoy driving, not just being driven. Under the hood, the Bonneville could be equipped with Pontiac's 389 cubic inch V8, producing up to 325 horsepower in its more powerful configurations. That made it genuinely quick for a large luxury car, and more importantly, responsive. It didn't just cruise, it moved with intent when asked. That combination is what defines the Bonneville's version of luxury. It wasn't about silence alone, it wasn't about status alone, it was about presence with personality. Today, a well-kept Pontiac Bonneville from this era typically trades between $35,000 and $65,000, making it one of the more accessible entries into true 1960s American luxury. 1962 to 1964, Oldsmobile 98. This is one of the most dangerous luxury cars of the 1960s, because it didn't look special. The 98 was never flashy. It didn't have dramatic styling cues, it didn't chase attention, and it didn't try to separate itself visually from the rest of traffic. And that's exactly what made it so effective. Its design is clean, long, and almost deliberately understated. The lines are straight, the proportions are conservative, and the overall presence is calm. To an untrained eye, it could easily be mistaken for a normal, big American sedan. But that normality hides a level of refinement that few cars of the era could match. Inside, the 98 reveals its true nature. The cabin is wide, quiet, and extremely comfortable. Everything feels solid, well insulated, and designed for long-distance travel. This wasn't a car meant to impress neighbors. It was meant to make hours on the road disappear. Under the hood, Oldsmobile offered its legendary 394 cubic inch Rocket V8, producing up to 345 horsepower in its most powerful versions. That was serious power for a full-size luxury sedan, and more importantly, it was delivered with remarkable smoothness. The 98 didn't feel fast in an aggressive way. It felt effortlessly capable. Speed came quietly, without warning. That contrast defines the car. Visually modest, mechanically confident, emotionally mature. Today, the Oldsmobile 98 remains one of the most overlooked luxury cars of the decade. Clean, well-preserved examples typically trade between $30,000 and $60,000. This wasn't luxury for attention. It was luxury for people who didn't need approval. And as the decade moves forward, luxury starts to take on very different forms. 1964 to 1966. Mercury Park Lane. This car represents a very specific idea of luxury. Everything you need, nothing you need to prove. The Park Lane lived in the space between Ford and Lincoln, and that position defined its entire personality. It was clearly more refined than a Ford, but deliberately less theatrical than a Lincoln. For many buyers in the 1960s, that balance was exactly the point. Design-wise, the Park Lane is elegant without being dramatic. Long, clean proportions, restrained chrome, and a body that feels confident but never loud. It doesn't try to dominate the street. It simply fits into it with quiet authority. This is luxury that blends in, until you spend time with it. Inside, the experience is calm and composed. Spacious seating, excellent ride quality, and an atmosphere designed for comfort over spectacle. The Park Lane didn't overwhelm its occupants with luxury cues. It reassured them instead. Everything feels intentional, solid, and mature. Under the hood, Mercury offered serious power. Many Park Lanes were equipped with Ford's 390 cubic inch V8, producing around 300 horsepower, with even larger engines available later. That gave the car strong, confident acceleration and effortless highway cruising. It was quick when needed, but never felt rushed or aggressive. That's the essence of this car. Not flashy, not intimidating, just quietly capable. Today, the Mercury Park Lane remains one of the most overlooked luxury cars of the 1960s. Well-kept examples typically trade between $25,000 and $50,000, making it an exceptional value for true full-size American luxury. And now I'm curious, would you rather have this kind of perfectly balanced, low-profile luxury, or the more dramatic presence of a Lincoln or Cadillac? Let me know in the comments. 1963 to 1964. Studebaker Avanti. This is what happens when luxury stops looking backward and starts looking forward. The Avanti didn't just challenge other luxury cars, it challenged the entire idea of what an American luxury car was supposed to look like in the 1960s. While most brands were still refining chrome, proportions, and tradition, Studebaker jumped straight into the future. The design was radical, smooth surfaces, no traditional grille, a low aerodynamic profile that felt closer to Europe than Detroit. For many buyers at the time, it was simply too strange, too modern, too unfamiliar. And that reaction tells you everything you need to know. This wasn't luxury meant to reassure, it was luxury meant to provoke. Inside, the Avanti felt just as different. The cockpit was tighter, more focused, and more driver-oriented than almost anything else in its class. This wasn't a rolling living room. It was a luxury car designed for people who cared about ideas, innovation, and engineering as much as comfort. Under the hood, the Avanti offered serious credentials. In its most notable versions, it carried a supercharged 289 cubic inch V8, producing up to 290 horsepower. That made it one of the fastest American production cars of its time, capable of performance that rivaled far more aggressive-looking machines. And that contradiction defined the Avanti. It looked like tomorrow. It drove like a performance car. But it was sold to a market that wasn't ready for either. Today, the Avanti is no longer misunderstood. It's respected. Well-preserved examples typically trade between $45,000 and $85,000, with exceptional cars commanding even more. Not because it's traditionally beautiful, but because it represents one of the boldest luxury experiments ever attempted in America. 1963 to 1965, Chrysler 300 Series. If the Avanti was luxury trying to leap into the future, the Chrysler 300 was luxury firmly planted in the present with a very clear message: respect. Because these Chryslers weren't beautiful in a soft or delicate way. They were elegant, yes, but with a heavy, serious, muscular stance. A car that didn't need ornamentation to feel dominant. Long hood, wide front end, clean body lines, and proportions that seemed designed for endless highways. It was the kind of luxury that commanded attention from a distance, as if it always existed one level above ordinary traffic. Inside, that idea became even more obvious. The atmosphere was spacious, formal, almost solemn. This wasn't a car meant to make you feel young. It was meant to make you feel important. And that's something many people forget about American luxury in the 1960s. Sometimes it didn't try to seduce. It tried to establish hierarchy. Under the hood, these cars could carry enormous V8 engines, including the 413 cubic inch Golden Lion in earlier years, and later the 426 V8, producing roughly 340 to 360 horsepower, depending on configuration. It wasn't muscle car power, but it was more than enough to move a large coupe with real authority, delivering that heavy continuous thrust that makes it feel less like the car is accelerating, and more like it has simply decided to move forward. Today, a well-preserved Chrysler 300 typically ranges between $45,000 and $90,000, with truly exceptional examples easily exceeding that. It isn't cheap, but it's not priced like mythology either. It's the cost of a car that still feels serious, even decades later. 1964 to 1966, Imperial Crown Coupe. There are luxury cars, and then there are cars that feel like they were built for a meeting where no one dares raise their voice. The Imperial Crown was exactly that, a kind of governmental luxury. In the 1960s, Imperial was Chrysler's way of saying, Cadillac isn't the only one allowed at the top. And it said it with a different tone, straighter, more formal, cooler, less seductive, more authoritative. Visually, the Imperial doesn't chase delicate harmony. It pursues presence. It is genuinely massive, with a body that feels like a carefully designed block, and details that communicate status without theatrical flair. Even the chrome feels structural rather than decorative. This was a car that didn't ask permission to occupy the highest tier of the American automotive world. Inside, the sensation was almost that of a private lounge. Immense space, large seats, isolation from the outside world, and an atmosphere closer to an exclusive club than a vehicle. The Imperial wasn't trying to feel youthful. It was trying to feel definitive. The engine reinforced that concept. Most earlier models carried the 413 V8, and during this period the 413, later joined by the 440 V8 depending on year and trim, delivered around 350 horsepower in stronger configurations. But what mattered was how that power arrived. No drama, no strain. Just immense, smooth thrust, as if the car simply ignored its own weight. Today, a well-kept Imperial Crown Coupe typically falls between $35,000 and $75,000, though pristine or highly documented examples can climb higher. It wasn't the most famous form of luxury, but it was one of the most serious. 1965 to 1966, Cadillac Fleetwood 60 Special. And here we arrive at the final stop, the car that, for many people, defines what American luxury was before it became spectacle. The Fleetwood wasn't just a big Cadillac. It was the Cadillac that felt built to last a lifetime. Its design wasn't aggressive or sporty. It was pure control. A long, clean silhouette with a stance that seemed to say, I don't need to impress anyone. Everyone already knows who I am. This wasn't a car meant to attract attention at a stoplight. It was meant to cross an entire city, as if the city itself quietly stepped aside. Its presence was calm, yet absolute, and that's what makes it the perfect closing note. It represents luxury as a complete idea, with nothing left to prove. Inside, it was an exercise in isolation, immense space, high-quality materials, and that unmistakable sensation that the outside world has been pushed far away. Driving a Fleetwood felt like entering an elegant capsule where everything was softened: noise, urgency, even time itself. And yes, it had muscle too. It just didn't show it off. Beneath the hood lived the massive 429 cubic inch V8, producing around 340 horsepower. Serious numbers for a luxury sedan of the era, but more importantly, delivered with such smoothness that the power almost felt invisible. It was the kind of car that could be dangerous simply because of how comfortable it made high speeds feel. In today's market, a Fleetwood 60 Special, in excellent condition, typically ranges from $40,000 to $90,000, with collector-grade examples surpassing that when impeccably preserved. It may not be the most famous Cadillac among the general public, but for many enthusiasts it remains one of the most respected. Luxury in the 1960s wasn't about being flashy. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about presence, about confidence, about cars that didn't need to explain why they mattered. Some expressed luxury through silence, others through size, others through innovation, restraint, or sheer authority. And that's what connects every car we saw today. They weren't built to chase trends, they defined them. Now, I want to hear from you. Which of these cars best represents true American luxury to you? Is it the futuristic confidence of the Avanti, the intimidation of the Chrysler 300, the formal power of the Imperial, or the quiet dominance of the Cadillac Fleetwood? Leave your answer in the comments, because luxury means something different to everyone. And if you enjoyed this journey through the golden age of American elegance, I highly recommend the video appearing on screen right now. There, we explore the fastest luxury coupes of the 1960s, cars that combined refinement with serious performance in ways few people remember today. Click, keep exploring, and I'll see you in the next one.